Right, Rich, who do you have for this series? Do you actually feel any like upset potential for Mad Lions on this one?
I still have a image now in my head of Double Lift trying to explain to Sneaky how a hard drive weighs the same when it's full or not. Yeah, I have. I actually think this is like a 50-50 game. I think this is a complete pick'em. I think there's obviously like previous BO5 precedents for Mad beating G2, right? So,
True.
I don't know. I think what's really interesting about this game, kind of like a sort of wild factor to this, is top lane. I think top lane's super interesting because obviously on the one hand you have Wonder, who you'd have to say overall like all or most of the year hasn't looked quite like his old self, and then on the flip side you've got Armu, who obviously has, you know, he's a decent top laner in spurts, but also has, you know, very obvious weaknesses. And now they've brought in Vizichachi to help top lane, which I find very strange because to me, Vizichachi has the exact same weaknesses, or had the exact same weaknesses as the player as Armu did, or at least very similar.
Yes. Yeah.
But I'd say Vizichachi was a better version of Armu, essentially, when he was sort of in his pomp. So I'm not really sure that's going to change anything, because unless Vizichachi has enough self-awareness to know what his, you know, how, you know, bad his overextending was and certain other aspects he was doing, it's a strange one. But in a weird way, I could also see that, you know, going the opposite way, and actually maybe because of that, it'll be really helpful to Armu. So I don't know. To me, that's kind of like the key lane to look at in that matchup. I so far as any matchup, you know, in the West in playoffs so far, like I think this is a complete coin flip 50-50. I would actually bet on, I want to bet on Mad. If I was going to make a bet, just because of the odds seem to favor G2, I would definitely bet on Mad, because I do think it's a complete 50-50. But I would make, G2 maybe 51-49 favorites or something. Like I think it's a complete flip. Oh, keep in mind as well that G2, I think they've won their last 5 games, and that's including a BO1 win over Mad and also Misfits, I'm pretty sure. So they went on a bit of a run and beat some pretty decent teams who they're likely to face in playoffs at the end. And we always spoke about, you know, for G2, with the kind of players that they have, it's about peaking at the right time rather than being really good all the way through. So it could be the case that G2 have actually just are about to peak and hit their stride. And I think what you might see in this series is either a very close back and forth series, which Mad might nag or G2 might nag, or you see G2 plow through Mad, and by the end of the series we're thinking, oh, actually their favourites to win LEC. So yeah, I think one of those two scenarios is pretty likely.
I think it's mostly going to come down to if Wonder is coin flipper, if he's going to play well. Because I think in the other roles, I think G2 does better all around everywhere, unless Caps goes full coin flip, which he does sometimes, but mostly not. I just think they're a stronger team of all. I think Mad Lions is weak in every single role but top, potentially. And I think Vizichachi bringing him in is actually really, really smart, because both of them are extremely aggressive players, but I think Vici is a little bit more passive than Armut, which will actually help him understand that playstyle a little bit better, because he's extremely good at playing aggressive, not so good at playing passive. Vici is a little bit better there. So I think that's really smart. I think it's good to focus on top lane, because that's where you're dominating compared to G2, if Wunder isn't on top form. And I mean, I think it comes down to Wunder. If Wunder performs, I think G2 wins, and if he doesn't perform well, then I actually think G2 will lose this one.
I think you characterised it well there, Rich, which I definitely agree. To me, there's 2 scenarios. One, which is why I understand why the predictions team actually had Mad Lions winning. They win, like, you know, an epic close series where, as you say, it's like a fucking mad war of attrition and chaos. Or G2, I think, just turns up and smashes them. I think one of the two, in my opinion. So basically, I think it's on G2. It's like, how well have they got their shit together? And quite frankly, I know it's best of ones, which I always do think. That's an area I've noticed in League. I know you guys don't have many tournaments, so it's hard not to do it, basically. But that's one thing, if people want like a little bit of inside info, in Counter-Strike, I and a couple of the other top analysts, we don't actually do like in-tournament form as the main factor as to how you predict teams. We actually tend to subscribe to like the first principles philosophy. So my logic goes like this: once the playoffs begins, I just look at the teams and what fundamental factors they have, like playing style, player strength. Now, obviously, I have to like do individual form in terms of like how good the player is now, but I don't, for example, go mental for like, 2 weeks ago they lost the best of one to this team, so that team's favoured. You know, I think that's like sort of incidental. It's more like confidence, in my opinion, that works for. It doesn't really affect like a best of 5 series too much. So I personally think it's more about like, is G2 actually like as good as the names look? They actually look like they're almost there from the end of the split. They look like somehow, I know it seems cliched because like the idea that like the team with all the good players just peaks right towards the playoffs is sort of what in Europe's always been the case with G2 Fnatic teams going back years. But they did it. They've actually done it this split. Like I genuinely think I actually think if my rogue theory applies in the show, I think G2 is going to win the split. I've come round completely because if you'd have caught me, I'm going to say like middle of the summer split, dude, I didn't even know if G2 was going to Worlds then. That looked fucking rough. Anyone have any thought? Who thinks does anyone actually have them winning? Does everyone else have Rogue winning the split?
I actually think that Rogue is a bad matchup for G2. I actually watched back, or not in its totality, but I actually watched the best of 5 that they played last split, where Rogue won 3-1. And again, it's not exactly the same. G2 aren't going to come into this playoffs in exactly the same mode or whatever that they did then. But Rogue did just look better. Like, I do think in terms of like their absolute peak possible performances, you can definitely make arguments that G2 is a better team when everyone's like on their absolute A game. I think the problem is that when players reset back towards their norms, that the norms for Rogue players are just higher than the norms for G2 players.
Right.
I think Otto over Wonder for sure. I think Inspired over Jankos, even though you can argue that Jankos can potentially have higher peaks. I guess same for top lane, maybe, kind of. Mid lane, again, like Caps, obviously if Caps is on song, he's better than Larson, but I think that Larson's norm right now, I would trust more at least. And then, AD carry's a bit of a wash, I guess, but I just think Hans works better as an AD carry in the context of his team. That doesn't mean he's better than Reckless, but I think he has been one of the best AD carries this split for sure. And I think he works better with his team than Reckless works with his team. And then Trimby as well. I think Trimby's been really good. I wouldn't say that Mickey X has been better than him. So I just feel like across the board that I actually just trust Rogue's sort of net neutral level more than I trust G2's. Obviously, if G2 show up in any kind of like 2019 form or whatever, then of course they're going to win. But I don't believe that. I think G2 are a bit better than they were last split. But I think that if they play Rogue, and they won't necessarily play Rogue, right? But if they do play Rogue, I think Rogue wins.
Fair enough.
I think Rogue is probably favored to win, and they should be winning that matchup. But there's decent chances for G2 to actually win the split. But I don't really think it matters in the grand scheme of things. I think most LEC teams are mostly just focused on actually getting to Worlds and winning Worlds, right? And actually trying to finally do something internationally and win the World Championship. I think sending both Rogue and G2 will be amazing for our region because they both have extremely good peaks, but completely different strengths, right? So depending on the meta that's good at Worlds, we will be sending 2 teams that might excel in different metas depending on what Riot is doing. So I think I want both these teams to go, and I don't really care who the third team is because I think these 2 teams could both potentially make it to a finals at Worlds.
I think that what you said is true for G2. I think that G2 will care way more, if they feel that there's a path towards potentially winning Worlds. Of course, that's like on G2's dartboard, right? I think for Rogue, though, actually winning LEC would be pretty important. One, because of what Thorin said earlier, where, again, I don't subscribe to the view that they're necessarily chokers, but I do think mentally it would be huge for them if they win LEC and have, like, closed out something where they didn't, like, let it, flitter away like it did last split or whatever. I think that'll actually be big for their confidence going into Worlds. And also keep in mind, everyone on G2's won a trillion trophies, right? Most of these players on Rogue haven't won anything. So I do, including Otto, right? Which seems crazy to say, but, even for him, I think it would be a huge confidence boost. So I think Rogue winning LEC would be huge for their chances at Worlds. For G2, I don't think it would make too much difference. But no, I think it'd be big if Rogue did.
I think there's also a factor for Rogue that's way bigger, which is because of the way they lost that spring final. It's almost like a gambler. Like in your mind, you're owed one. You're supposed to win that one just to get it back, as it were. Because if people don't remember, the way they lost that series was about the least satisfying way you could ever lose. They were like 2-0 up, then they were leading in the third game. Then the drafts were looking basically that's like you would feel so cheated if you lost that way. So I would hope if you're a true pro, what you're supposed to do really is like just imagine no season exists this except this one and just play this one out, and if you're the better team, you win. But it's put it this way, those like narratives, they do get in people's heads. Like, put it this way, when we were having Odo Amne on, I think it was Summoning Insight, and I was sort of like lightly ribbing him about that because I've known him a long time. Dude, it was one of those ones where I could tell, like, even when they laugh for that one, like, you have sort of like touched the wound a little bit, you know, that, yeah, of course it fucks with someone. If they've never even been in a final after all those years, then you make the final and everyone's telling you, it's your time, you've just beaten G2, you're the best, it's your, you know, like, I always say, the most dangerous final, I have this term, right, the most dangerous final in esports is the one where on paper, one team's supposed to win, and so it's just viewed as a coronation. Because the amount of times that while they're like sort of just waiting for someone to put the crown on them, the other team just runs up and just steals it, it's mental. Like, it happens so many times. If people don't know, probably the most famous CSGO match ever is exactly that storyline. When Cloud9 won the Boston Major, they weren't supposed to. Literally, FaZe Clan was supposed to win that tournament, and nearly every player on FaZe Clan was like a legendary player who hadn't won the major, and it was supposed to all be like, right, well done, you know, like everyone get ready to like win the tournament. And in doing so, when they thought they would cruise through this match, the underdog just beat them narrowly, because that it takes all the pressure off the underdog in that setting. So I just hope for Rogue that, like I say, I hope they do buy into the idea that they're not chokers, and like you forget about the last ones, and it's a new split and all that. It's just, unfortunately, I have noticed like patterns do tend to play out over and over again in these games. Like you get put in the same scenarios over and over again. It's why, if you notice, I'm one of the people who's one of the last people to be out on perks, because it's like, mate, I'm not going to fucking bail on the most clutch player ever, like, before it's even over. Like, have you never seen a fucking movie? You know what? LCS fans are those people who are like, oh, right, oh no, I heard a gunfire and then the camera cut away, so I guess that villain's dead. Right, well, the movie's ended now. Wow, he's going to go and meet his family. Like, what the hell? A guy with an axe behind him. It's like, have you never seen a movie before? Like, till you see the body, you ain't over, is it? So, till I see Puck's, whatever, $11 million body just swirling around the fucking drain, I'm not giving up. I'm staying in on him. I'm even in on people who don't even play League of Legends, like fucking Soaz, where it's like, even they're not fighting their own corner anymore. I'm like, I'm going to give Soaz a job. And he's like, I don't even want one. It's like, shut up, you're good, you're still good, damn it. And Froggen, you have to play as well.
Froggen, number one fanboy.
I do, low key. So you know what's sad, actually? People think I'm trolling. I actually would consider, like, those are the only teams I ever would have considered coaching, is teams that had players like that. And we're basically low key, I just think no one ever did, like, the right team around them or whatever. Want to see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, you know, be a pleb and don't.